Okay, good evening. I'd like to call to order the Administration and Public Works Committee of Monday, October 24th, and I'll begin with a roll call. Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember Burns. Okay, Councilmember Newsma.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Present.
Okay, great, we have a quorum. We'll start with approving the minutes. Is there a motion to?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the A&PW Committee, which was October 10th. 2022.
Second.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
The minutes are approved. We'll now move to public comment. Public comment. Okay, we'll begin with our remote public comment with Mr. Vasilko.
I don't see him online yet.
Okay, Ms. Payton?
I'm here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Vasilko is here. Okay.
So a couple of quick things. I think staff needs to explain why on item A7, the IHC construction bid was even accepted in the first place. We now have to delete it and then award to Ballard. Coming on the heels of other change orders discussed at the last meeting, are now change orders for CDM Smith for lead pipe underground work and for Benchmark for the large diameter sewer rehabilitation. 48,000 for one, 30,000 for another. Maybe staff could briefly explain that. Really concerned or annoyed, I guess, about why on A13, the emergency replacement of 2 boilers at Noyes, why no other alternative to fossil fuel gas boilers was investigated, number one. And number two, why no local contractors were invited to bid that project, just out of city, mostly Chicago-based contractors. And like a boomerang, why is A14 coming back again? This is the private sewer repair line cost in excess of $15,000 for repair to a residential property. It seems like this has been discussed time and time again. This is like a no-brainer. This should be approved. It should have been approved before. We seem to have no problem awarding $55 million projects and millions of dollars of change orders. But when we're talking about a $15,000, city payment on behalf of a city resident who pays exorbitant taxes, why this is being debated to the nth degree. It should just be approved. I don't know how much time I have left, but I'd also like to note that last time at the city council, and I think at APW, there was a discussion about the animal shelter. We keep hearing that it's a $6.3 million budget, but in a FOIA request,
Point of information.
in a FOIA request that was answered, the budget as of this September this year is $7.5 million, not 6.3. So I think somebody
Point of
needs to
information.
explain that wasn't stated accurately. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next,
A
Ms.
point of information. I just want to be sure that the chair is keeping time just so everyone's getting equal time. Okay.
Ms. Payton?
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I would like to object to A6 about the 142 new trees, and D1 wants to come on your property, the city, and decide about whether we should cut down trees or not. The city of Evanston does not take care of their own trees. They should not be granted money every year to plant new trees when the city has failed to do their own job that they're accusing us of not doing in D1. In the 1900 block of Dewey, I believe it was in August, a citizen's, 2 of her vehicles were totaled by a parkway tree, which was the city of Evanston's responsibility. She had complained about it several times, and the city didn't do anything until it destroyed her vehicles. So I don't think you should be talking about coming on the property, on our property, to decide about our trees when the city is not doing their job. Here on East Railroad and University, along the tracks, you have planted those bushes many, many years ago, and there's garbage and no maintenance of that. Also, the lady at Emerson and Jackson cut down 40 or 50 trees, and no one said anything about that. So why are you planting more trees and you allowed her to cut down the trees? And she did notify the neighbors, and I'm assuming the city would know if she's cutting down 40 or 50 trees. And if you don't, you should have found out about that instead of coming on our property. Also, you could put that money towards the landlord fund, which somehow I seem to be cut out of. I would like to say that this D2 should be put in the Planning and Development Housing Subcommittee, because this is a conversation about inspection that should be talked about in the subcommittee. Body cam is not feasible, it's very expensive and unnecessary. I have promoted McWright and Associates for many years, and there's very simple things that you can do to make sure that an inspection goes properly. I just had an inspection last week, and I had no documentation to say that I passed and everything was okay, and the city will be able to write up violations that were not found.
Thank you, Ms. Payton.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. And Ms. Rosinski.
Hi, thank you very much for letting me speak here. I wanted to address A14 and also just a miscellaneous thing. A14 is really important. I agree with everything Mike Vassilko said on all his issues. He really looks at this stuff. But the A14, I'm a realtor, and I just had a client who had a small house. She was elderly, and her sewer broke, and it was in the street there. And she had to pay somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000. She had to take out a loan on her house and then have that proceeds from the sale of her house. Her whole retirement fund was in that house, and she had to give whoever she had to give that to, like $20,000 or $30,000. And it's not like she was a wealthy woman. So I actually think that $15,000 should be brought down to $10,000 or less, depending on the amount. Our cities all of our sewers are so much older, and we have so much construction going on in certain areas, and that onslaught of heavy trucks and jackhammering does damage underneath the ground on some of these things. So I think we need to help all of our residents be able to stay in our homes and have sewers done. There's a lot we could do, but I just want to really get you to think about that. It is an equity issue too for people who pay the high taxes. The second thing, so please pass it. And then we can adjust it for people who on lower incomes so that they don't lose whatever minute part of equity they've had in their house living in our city. The second thing, the animal shelter, I think we got to go back and look at this. There's $2 million in contingencies on quote is 6.3 million or 7.2 million. And I just see change orders and change orders and change orders on so many projects that are coming through Evanston. And I'm thinking either A, we're accepting people who don't know how to bid their projects properly, or B, they know they can come to Evanston, bid low, knowing that they're going to have to change their project. I don't know what it is, but it's not fair to the residents. So please send the animal shelter back to the beginning. I don't know. I think we can build a really nice shelter for far less than what they're bringing their numbers at. Okay, thank you so much for your time, and have a good meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Rosinski. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to make a public comment? Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair. I just have a procedural question. I'm here to speak on item A7. Is there going to be time for public comment on that, or is this it right now? Are we going to, I'm asking so I know how to tailor my comments right now.
Okay, so I think now would be the moment, since we haven't set aside time at that particular item. Is that correct? Okay, all right, so now, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the time that you're giving me. I'm here to advocate on behalf of my employer. I'm Ronald O'Neill. I'm the general counsel for IHC Construction Companies. I'm here to speak to the committee regarding the decision that it's before it about moving forward with taking the award for the 1909 raw water intake replacement project away from IHC. The council awarded it to us back in August and is now considering going through the procedures of taking it away and giving it to Ballard Marine pursuant to a preliminary injunction that was issued. So you all know the history there, and I just want to point out just a few important things. IHC was under the impression that meeting MBE and WBE numbers was important to the city of Evanston. We've always been under that impression. You have these standards in a lot of your projects. IEPA set a standard of 17%, 12 for MBE and 5 for WBE. IHC, in submitting our bid, did a lot of work to meet those numbers, and we did them significantly. In terms of the MBE, and I'm sorry, I had it backwards, it's MBE 5%, WBE 12%. We will be providing, as part of our contract, $2.236 million to MBE contractors. And in terms of WBE, we'll be providing $5.38 million. Ballard, on the other hand, has not met those numbers. We met the 17% that we were required for DBE, and they have not. They, on the other hand, are providing $236,000, which is 0.50% of the IEPA required numbers. WBE, they're providing $49,810. They're not even close to meeting the MBE, WBE numbers that IEPA and this city require. There's a cost to us to do that work. Those contractors don't fall out of the sky. We did real work because we're committed to that portion of our business with the city. So that's one thing that I want to point out, that you're thinking about giving a contract to a contractor, general contractor, who hasn't done the work to provide those numbers as this city requires and as IEPA requires. We believe that we can cure any deficits that the court found in terms of us meeting the requirements of your bid specifications. We've never been given an opportunity. No one's ever spoken to us and given us an opportunity to be heard about curing the issues that the judge found. If you can't allow us to cure it, then we would just ask that you rebid the project. That would be the fair thing to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
We have other people from our company that like to be heard.
Okay.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. My name is Russell Ginn. I'm a vice president with IHC construction. I just want to touch base on a couple facts here. Concerning the bid, I was in charge of our company putting the proposal together for the raw water intake structure. So we spent nearly 2.5 months on the project with a staff of 4 or 5 people to put this bid together for you. So we take it very much to heart that we're being considered to be dropped from the consideration. Basically, what it's coming down to is the fact that there was a statement in the qualifications for bidders that states that the contractor shall be able to demonstrate at least 10 years of experience performing marine works projects on the Great Lakes. This was put together by staff at Evanston. We questioned that prior to the bid. There was an addendum put out that said that we could meet that qualification through our subcontractors. So therefore, in our interpretation of the specifications, the contractor or their marine works subcontractors would be able to meet those qualifications. We submitted those qualifications post-bid at the request of Evanston, and have never really, as Ron had talked about, we never really got questioned about can we meet it or not. We were taken to court by the second place bidder along with the city of Evanston. And like I said, that injunction was the outcome of that. We all know about that. But so I guess the point that we're looking at is the fact that the qualifications that were required for this contract were never fully defined as what constitutes a marine works subcontractor. It was never even discussed in the court case. We felt that our folks met that, and we were never questioned about any individual in that. Going back to the award basis and in the original specs, you go to the 4 things that were qualified: the adherence to the conditions and requirements of the bid specs, price, which we were $2.5 million lower than the second place bidder, qualifications of the bidder, and the maintenance, cost, and warranty processes. So those are the things that we looked at. Price was to be considered ahead of the qualifications and the specifications, and we're not sure that that's happened yet. So we're just asking that you reconsider that, and if worst case scenario, that we get another opportunity to bid the project. So
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I probably don't need this. I'm Dave Rock. I'm the president and CEO of IHC. And I'm here tonight to try and help you people out. We're the low bidder on your public works project. We do a lot of public works. Your staff checked us out, recommended us for an award. You awarded us the job. And what I could only describe is a truly unique set of circumstances. Your disgruntled second place bidder took you and us to court and created basically a doubt with a circuit court judge in terms of some terminology that was utilized. You have the right and the ability to award us this job. We will remedy our bid now with the new ruling that we got from the judge, which is new information that we have not been given a chance to remedy. We were in discussion with your staff and answered questions for them. They told you to award us the job, which you did. That's the right thing to do in public procurement. $2.5 million is $2.5 million. I could stand up here for a long time and talk about people that believe in affirmative action and people that give it lip service. At the end of the day, we believe Evanston was serious about it. We met it. To award a job where the low bidder, us, meets the criteria that you laid out, and the second place bidder says we tried. I got to be honest with you. I do a lot of this. I've seen a lot of this. I've never seen that happen. So I think it'll make a statement about who Evanston is and the bid document that you put together. And if there are some things in there that you want to correct, I don't really want you to rebid the job. I want you to give the job to me. Because at the end of the day, we firmly believe that when we're working in or have to respond to a circuit court judge's ruling, that I don't want to go there and discuss that, but at the end of the day, we believe we can remedy it. We believe we should get the job. in the worst-case scenario, you should rebid it again. If in your procurement policies, if there's some things that you'd like to take a second look at, so be it. But I would fully support your idea to sit here and say there are some de minimis things in here, and they're the low bidder. You've heard it tonight in terms of citizens that are watching this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Attorney Price, is he here? Would you, could you comment on this situation? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam
Do you
Chairman.
want to save that for discussion on the issue when we actually get there in the agenda? I think that, yeah, unless you feel there's some pressing need to respond now, I think we can just, during the normal course
I
of
am
things.
here at your pleasure. Do it then.
So we'll discuss it at that item. Thank you very much. No further public comments? Okay, great. Then we'll move to the consent agenda. Items A1 through A13. Are there any items that anybody would like removed?
3, 7, 11, and 13.
3, 7, 11, 13.
3, 7, 11, and 13. They're all prime numbers, just coincidentally.
If that is it, then I will move the consent agenda minus items A3, 7, and 13. I said, if there's nothing else that anyone wants to pull from the consent agenda, I will move the consent agenda minus items A3, A7, and A13,
And A11.
and A11.
I will second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the consent agenda has been moved with the exceptions of items A3, A7, A11, and A13.
That brings us to item A3.
So- Okay, so would somebody like to move item A3?
I'll move item A3, approval of customer relationship management software with QSend Technologies Incorporated.
Second.
Okay. The item A3 has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Newsma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure who here is Ms. Pontarelli prepared to speak on this, but I have some questions about this contract and the 311 app. If you could just tell us what's included, what's not included, what, if anything, we might have to pay extra for at a later date.
Good evening, committee chair and members of the committee, Deputy City Manager Stonebeck and City Manager Stowe. My name is Sue Pontarelli. For those that don't know me, I'm the 311 and Police Service Desk Manager. And yes, the app from the previous is a little bumpy. This particular vendor offers us two apps. One will be a brand new mobile app that works directly with the system, for Android and for iPhone. And will be branded with our 311 and city logos, of course. And the second app is for internal customers, so for like Public Works Agency that is maybe doing special pickups, and they take a photo of the special pickup and they bill it. Everything that is a separate app just for them, so that they don't have to push and pull. And so both of those are nice features. Well, we did test both of them. We had external customers test the mobile app, and they found it very easy to use, and it can be done anonymously as well.
And that's all included in this price?
Yes, it's all included in the price.
And that will integrate with our current city website?
Yes.
And the data from the old system will port over so we can
Yes, so one of the
visibility?
requirements, yes, it was that we have 11 years of data, which I think is extremely important to be able to review and look at. And so it is being brought over. It's just going to be a matter of how we migrate it over, but we will include it in the new system.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I have.
Councilmember Reed.
Yes. Hi, Sue.
Hi.
So I'm excited that we're looking at this new technology. I just want to understand, can you talk a bit about the user side of this? I wonder, does this allow for an open 311 portal? Can folks go in and see all of the requests that have been made and where it is in the process? Do you know if this software allows for that?
Sure. The external customer can use the mobile app or can use the web or, of course, can call us, but we're talking about the CRM. And they can take a photo, GPS, it will pick up right where someone's at. It will integrate with our open data that we use now. We do limit a few things we don't want public. Maybe, and I always use the example of someone sometimes puts like a drug tip into the 311 system, something where we wouldn't want out. But yes, it will integrate for open data so customers can look. They also will be able to pull a heat map and look at things in the particular area. Also, we have where the overlay of the wards or by zip code as far as the end user. So it's very easy to use, and it was really important, as I mentioned, to be able to do it anonymously. And the other part just was really important is that someone can respond, a customer can respond without logging in directly to the email. That is one of the challenges with the current system.
Thank you. I'm excited to see this as it rolls out. I think, and I hope we can have a close relationship with this company. I know that from the perspective of the clerk's office, where I used to be, Next Request, the city had a pretty good relationship with them. We were able to, in fact, get some essentially custom software, some custom additions to the software because of things that we were experiencing in real time. And so I'm hoping we can develop this kind of relationship with this company and see how we can push forward. 301 is an extremely important part of our city's operations, and I think we can do, and I don't think it's on the staff, but I think we can do a better job, and I think part of that is acquiring both new software that can help keep up with the latest trends in the 301 world, as well as making sure we're staffing this office. But I'm just really interested to see a sampling of this new software, and particularly interested in an open portal for this that would allow residents a better insight into what's going on with 311.
Thank you. It's very exciting, and Q-Alert has been extremely responsive on the questions we've had. They have open APIs on any of our integrations that we need. That was a big part of what was part of what we looked for in the RFP and the RFQ, because we want to make sure that the systems talk to each other, and they just seem to be like, we're Evanston, what's next, so it's an exciting company and exciting time with them. So I agree. I think it will be some very interesting things ahead with it.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris?
Sorry, I just wanted to say that I met with 311 last week, and I was very impressed with the detail and the information that went into looking at the different agencies that provided the technology. So I appreciate the hard work that went into looking and vetting the different companies. Thank you.
Thank you. And part of the great team is here as well with Susie Hall and Yvette Hobson, so appreciate it. It was definitely a group effort.
Great, thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, so all in favor of approving item A3?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, item A3 passes. And now we're moving on to item A7. Could someone please move item A7?
Madam Chair, I'll move item A7, approval of a contract award with Ballard Marine Construction LLC for the 1909 raw water intake replacement, which is bid 22-35.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Price, thank you. Attorney Price.
Well, this is a $45 million or more project, and nothing about it is simple. It was 2.5 years in the making. What it is to replace your turn-of-the-century water intake pipe for one of 3 that you have for the plant. It's about 1 mile and some out into the middle of Lake Michigan. And if the project weren't complicated enough, you're in the worst construction market there's been for quite some time, escalating prices and all the rest. A community similar to Evanston, up the shoreline in Wisconsin, went out for a similar project, and it was $12 million less, and that was only 4 months before our bids went out. That's how much prices were escalating. More importantly, though, in driving this project is the remarkable job staff did to get funding. Between a combination of IEPA loans and federal dollars, Evanston is able to pay at much smaller interest rates for this project through those 2 funding sources. But they come, in the case of IEPA, with a lengthy set of administrative requirements and some timing challenges. So in this case, they went out to bid. One of the things that staff wanted to make sure they got were contractors who were qualified to work in deep water. And so they had a requirement that required experience on the Great Lakes, which staff said or better, 10 years, Great Lakes or better. Staff read that as bigger bodies of water than the Great Lakes would suffice. That was IHC's partner in this, Global, has experience on the seas and oceans of the world, but not specifically on the Great Lakes. Ballard, which has worked on the Great Lakes, challenged on that basis, that was a non-waivable defect in IHC's team. Evanston, for better or worse, is famous in the construction law industry for a case from 2002 called Keefe Shea versus Evanston, in which the courts ruled that if you say this is your process, you have to follow your process, and that is a fair bidding process, and you can't deviate from it. So, in the Keefe Shea case, it was if you require 15 letters of authority concerning DBE, and the person submits 14, despite the fact that they could have submitted twice 15, 30, that was the evidence, it didn't matter. The Illinois Supreme Court announced a new rule, which was there are due process rights at stake for everybody, and so Evanston wasn't allowed to give it to the low bidder in Keefe Shea because of one missing letter that was just inadvertently not there. But that set the bar, the standard. So in this case, recognizing the complexity of this case, staff gave itself elbow room. It put in there, we know that this is a complex project and we are going to have to work with bidders after the bids are opened. And we may need to ask for information at any time. And when we do, nobody can complain because you're all on alert that this is going to be the process. And that is what Evanston did. When it opened the bids for this project, none of the 3 bidders gave a perfect bid. All of them had deficiencies, IHC included. Among IHC's deficiencies were the fact that Global hadn't put in anything indicating that either the superintendent and manager had the experience or that Global had experience on the Great Lakes specifically. And that became the challenge. Ballard, in the number 2 spot, also had deficiencies, one of which, as was mentioned today, they didn't return a particular agreement. We focused on the lowest putative bidder, IHC's team, and we reached out to IHC after the bids were open and asked them to supplement their information about the experience of Global. And Global reached down and got information from some of its subcontractors and put together a package of information, which the city accepted, and moved forward to award the bid. Stantec, our engineer on this, found that IHC's team was qualified to do it. Ballard sued saying, no, you said Great Lakes, and Great Lakes means Great Lakes. We too, so they said, could have gone out and gotten other contractors who worked on other bodies of water, but that you gave us a limited pool. They had an advantage. It was unfair. the court, in ruling on the injunctive relief, said, we hear you, Evanston, about the elbow room and the wiggle room to go and work with bidders after the bid opening. I see that and will honor it. And so I will consider the information that Great Lakes and IHC and their subcontractors put in after the bid opening. And I still find it insufficient. You cannot cure that, said the court. You cannot get the 10 years of experience you need. That defect is not curable. Therefore, I am enjoining Evanston from awarding the contract to IHC. Now then, what is Evanston to do? So we regrouped with staff, and on the basis of what the judge had ruled, plus...
And that, excuse me, Dirk, that ruling was made several weeks ago.
Yes, by Judge Myerson.
And just point of information, since we're interrupt, was that a temporary restraint? Was that a TRO, or is that a?
We didn't. You can get a TRO for anything in Illinois. That was a preliminary injunction, because that was after a 2-day hearing. We presented evidence. They presented evidence. That was a 2-day hearing, so it was a preliminary injunction. TROs are, we agreed not to move forward with IHC until we had the hearing. So, what to do then? Again, the issue for staff primarily as a concern is the timing requirements of the IEP administrative regulations and the timing challenges of keeping the loan in place. IEP's administrative regulations say if you go out to bid, there is a 45-day minimum waiting period for people to develop a market for DBE issues. Only then can you go out for bid, then you get the bids back, you open them, and as we've done now twice, you have to evaluate the bidders. You take the lowest putative bidder, evaluate them for responsiveness and responsibility. Then you come here, get what we're getting tonight, a notice of intent to award, not an award itself. We can't do that yet. We have to do this preliminary prerequisite step, a notice of intent to award. But we're going to award to these guys. We did this with IHC. You said you passed a notice of intent to award to IHC. We take that, bundle it up with our investigation and our reports and comments, and we send it to EPA. And IEPA then says either we bless it or we don't, and if they bless it, they send it back with a loan agreement. And that's how far we got with IHC. We got it back with a loan agreement that expired September 26th. And so we moved quickly on the preliminary injunction hearings to try and get a determination that we could move forward with IHC. And IHC, to their credit, held their bid longer than the bid documents did as part of this whole process. But when Myerson said, no, you can't award it to them, September 26th came and went. IEPA sent us correspondence that said, well, we're rescinding that IEPA loan agreement. You're welcome to send us the next lowest bidder through the bids process, and that's an acronym down there. And so that staff focused on a couple of things, taking the best shot at trying to save the funding and not worry about a bypass date. If you don't use the loan money IEPA commits by a certain date, they move on to other people. There's a line for this stuff, and we don't want to lose the line. So it was a close call between trying to rebid and by the skin of our teeth, maybe get within the window for that, or, as IEPA suggested, looking to the second low bidder, which was Ballard, who had defects, as we know. But again, Judge Myerson's opinion was their defects, she actually said this in her opinion, Ballard's defects were different than IHC's. Ballard's can be fixed. So there is some issue about whether a particular form needed to be returned or not. They said, yes, we can do that. Ballard checked a box, for example, on one of their forms as a clerical error that said they couldn't swear they weren't debarred from bidding. We raised all of these issues in trying to defend the IHC bid, saying, what do you want us to do, Judge? We can't give it to Ballard anyway, and we've got this process that allows us to work with them, and we read Great Lakes 10 years as a minimum, not the precise requirement. And again, she said, nope, Ballards are different than IHCs. IHCs cannot be cured. Ballards can be. So with a focus on funding to save the taxpayers as much money as possible, and with a focus on trying to get the project done and out to a market that's ever increasing in pricing, and with an agreement from Ballard, which IEPA required us to go get, that they will hold their bid price while we work through this, this is where we are. we're rescinding your prior formal action to award the notice of intent to award to IHC, because the court has enjoined us from proceeding any further with IHC, and going to the second bidder, the next putative low bidder, which is Ballard. And again, even though Ballard's original bid at the day of opening was deficient, they have cured all of those. They have submitted all of the forms and all the information they needed to do. Michael's, in third place, that bidder, they've not shown up for anything. They're out of the picture. So this is where we're at. The issues have not concluded in the litigation. IHC has initiated proceedings to enjoin us from moving forward with Ballard for the same sort of fair bidding process claims. That's going to make its way through. That is somewhat okay by me and staff, because however that falls out, however that articulates itself out in the court proceedings, it gives us a story to tell to IEPA about don't bypass us. We're stuck in this hugely complicated project, probably the most complicated project IEPA has, and we're trying to find our way through with people who we think can do the job. IHC's reputation is sterling, but IHC is only doing 20% of this project. They have to go get a contractor to help them work in the lake. IHC has not worked in the lake, and that's fine. We agree that that would be an appropriate response, but whoever was working in the lake needed to have this deep water experience, which the judge is holding us to on Great Lakes. So what we're asking for tonight are the prerequisite steps. We're not even back to where we were with IHC when the injunctive, when the preliminary injunction proceedings started. We want to get back at least that far, because if you pass this tonight, we bundle this up and send this to IEPA. Staff talked them into a very short review last time so that we could try and not lose a construction season. And that's to staff's credit, but there's no guarantee we'll do that again, especially since, to be frank, it's an election year, and a lot of money was in capital projects that went out the door, and in 2 weeks, it's not an election year anymore. So, and an overworked state staff, we don't know that we can talk them into as quick a turnaround. But we're hoping, because we don't want to risk whatever the understandings are about the bypass date. We have conflicting information that the bypass date is January 1 or March 1. And if we have to rebid, if the proceedings work out that way, and we'll petition IEPA to say, yeah, March 1, please, and so we can probably squeeze it in, depending. But this is our best shot at saving the city of Evanston taxpayers money that we know is there and committed by both the federal loan and the IEPA loan, with a bid number we're aware of. It doesn't open up a new spreadsheet in a terrible construction market where prices were rising. So that's why we're here as staff recommending this is how we move forward. At least take these prerequisite steps, and then we'll see what happens with the rest of it, because it's going to take some time to go down to EPA before it comes back and before we can move forward with Ballard anyway.
Thank you very much for that. All right, Councilmember Nusma.
So, thank you, Attorney Price. So the money you're suggesting that we'll save by taking this action tonight is not the several $1 million difference between the low bidder and the second lowest bidder. It's in locking in the low interest financing.
True.
And locking in the original prices that were bid.
True.
As opposed to taking our chances on what they might be if we go out to bid again in another month or two.
All true.
Okay.
And it's or two, because even if we said tomorrow, we're going to rebid.
Month or two or three.
Yes.
Okay. So is your recommendation that we take this action tonight?
Yes.
But if I'm understanding you correctly, this won't be the final consideration of this issue by staff or the city council?
Probably not. It's set up to be that we can move forward and do it, but with respect to the challenges that are there and that I expect to happen, we'll probably be back to you for final approval to go ahead and sign the IEPA loan agreement.
Yeah.
If there aren't any challenges, or if it somehow works out, depending on what the judges say, I mean, frankly speaking, we argued for the wiggle room and never expected her to say, I see your wiggle room, but I'm not going to allow IHC to cure. That was not the intent. Okay, well, now that we're there, and Ballard can, yeah, this is how we got here.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Reed?
Thank you. So, we had a very impassioned delivery from the IHC folks. So, if this council really was persuaded by that, our only our only option would be to rebid in order for IHC to become a qualified candidate. Is that correct?
Yeah, we would
remedy-
redo the bid documents, would clean them up, and then that would give IHC an opportunity to rebid with its team of, whether it's Global or someone else, but yeah.
But there is no option through the current process. The judge, from your interpretation, has ruled that we cannot allow them to remedy their current bid.
Until she is reversed, that is true.
Okay.
Well, she would allow them to remedy their bid based on what they submitted and the supplemental information. I don't know that, her point was that this team, Global, did not have, that from which the pricing was based, isn't going to be able to get 10 years' experience overnight. So it's not like submitting a form.
Yeah. Okay. I think your suggestion is convincing. So I support moving forward with A7 as proposed.
Great. No, sorry. Okay, so I'd like to call the question. Sorry, Councilmember Burns.
So did the judge say that Ballard could not satisfy it through using a subcontractor, that they themselves within their own
IHC.
team? Yeah, IHC, I'm sorry. Needed to have that 10-year experience and that they couldn't satisfy it by working with a subcontractor? I'm trying to understand that part.
We agreed early on in the process that IHC could satisfy the process through their marine subcontractor. That was what we said. But when it came to it, City of Evanston said, and that was Global, but the City of Evanston said initially with staff, we'll also look one level down, subcontractors are subcontractors, we don't care how many levels down, beyond Global to some other people that they put together as a team that had worked and brought barges and done other things on the Great Lakes. But the judge found that that wasn't sufficient.
What wasn't sufficient, to be
The
clear?
team didn't have 10 years of experience on the Great Lakes doing the kind of work that was set forth in our requirement. She read the requirement differently than our staff did.
Okay.
She read it much more restrictively than we were. We were looking at it as a basis, anything better or bigger. She said, no, you said Great Lakes, 10 years trenching. So a barge captain doesn't trench. And that was the kind of analysis that went on.
And why couldn't they go out and find another sub that did have that experience in the way that the judge described?
Well, that's the bid process about supplementing, and we presented the bid and the team as it was that we were intending to award to. And so she had to evaluate the bids as presented.
But
We would otherwise had to rebid all of it, and
You would
which
have-
is what IHC is asking us to do, is
Okay.
rebid all of it. But
so following that judgment, they just can't say at this point, okay, we can go out and find a sub that has the experience that the judge has determined would be satisfying to the court.
I don't know.
I mean, that's an important question.
If they, well, but they haven't presented us with that option or opportunity. I mean, we have their bid with Global that the judge has enjoined us from moving forward with. If they wanted to reconsider and brought in a new team that said, here's our 10 years, we've cured, they could do that, but they haven't. They haven't done that.
That seems pretty
And we
easy.
have a funding-
And I'm not in the business, but that seems doable and worth doing for this
Point of information.
contract.
Just as I think a clarifying point, from my understanding that kind of modification would be substantive. It would be, one, it would likely change the price quite a bit, bringing on this new contract. Am I wrong about this, or?
Well, I would say that they wouldn't, if it changed the price, they wouldn't be in the low putative bidder position. So, and I don't know what the judge would think about that. I mean, she's given us the wiggle room and the opportunity to cure things. All right, well, they're swapping out a partner and bringing in a new one. If it saved us $2.5 million and we can do it by the timelines, I'm not going to go on and object if the judge is willing to do that. But I'm trying to get, or staff, when I say we as staff are trying to get a project done that is at low interest financing. And we've got a date deadline coming.
Thank you.
I'd like to call the question.
Well,
There's
I'm
still
not
lights?
sure. Well,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. Are your lights on again?
Yeah, I turned my light on
And I wasn't done either. Do we have a sense of how the interest rate would change, or how any of these numbers may change? Any idea based on other similar projects that have been out recently in other places?
Well,
Are we just
based on the general public works construction market, prices are not going down, and interest rates are not going down, and the reports are 8%. Now, to their credit, IHC and Ballard have both
the
held
reports
their
were? What
bids.
did you just say? What was the last thing you said? What the reports?
Interest
were?
rates. Inflation rate is 8%.
Okay.
So, and shortages of things have not resolved themselves, and so, if the rest of the public works market is any indication, prices aren't going down. Maybe we'll get lucky and people will sharpen their pencils and find a new way to do this, but our anticipation, based on 4 months elapsing between the one in Wisconsin and the one here, going up $14 million, is that we're using that as the basis to say we are concerned.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. I didn't see your light on again?
Yeah, I think you just flicked it off.
I did, but it was on again.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I have an interest in, if there's the possibility that we can save $2.5 million. Why would we not attempt to save it? And if there is, given the exchange that just took place, I think I'd be willing to see if the judges, if the IHC is able to come in with the same or very similar bid and, save us $2 million and have the expertise, and if the judge is willing to accept that, and, if we were to hold off on this for a few weeks, do you think that would jeopardize the deal? And, do you think it's even possible for all of that to play out in a couple of weeks or before?
I don't recommend delaying tonight's action, because again, it just goes to EPA, and whether to sign the loan agreement, that'll come back, right? And the IHC has looked to enjoin that from happening, and the courts will weigh in that time where it goes down to IEPA and comes back. That doesn't turn around in 24 hours or 48 hours. But if you wait another 2 weeks or 4 weeks and IEPA takes their time, now we're up against the bypass date. This is your best shot, without committing to any of this, in terms of an ultimate result of keeping your low interest financing and not blowing out past the bypass date.
So what you're saying is that there's a possibility to move forward with this tonight and still at some later date switch out then contractor.
Yeah, that's depends on what IHC does. Right now, all they've asked us to do is not award to Ballard. We haven't seen a proposal where they've got somebody where they're attempting to cure the Great Lakes experience issue. Or nor have they appealed. So if they appeal and the appellate court reads it the way we defended it, well, then we win and we're back to IHC. But all due respect to the appellate court, we may not have a project because we may not have funding.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then, I guess I'm back where I was.
It's an appeal is different than what I think Councilman Reed just, described based off of the conversation that you and I just had. So I just want to put that out there. So can what I described or what he just described gel with moving forward with this tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the heat is on everybody. It's on IHC, it's on everybody to not blow the funding for this. We don't have the luxury of time. That is the pressing issue.
Because the appeal feels more of a question about the interpretation of the 10 years and all of that. That's the appeal, in my understanding. But that's different from saying, yeah, if they can satisfy it in a way that the judge is agreeable to, then we're still able to award them the contract. That's different. So that's still, even if we go forward with this tonight, that's still a possibility.
So, yeah, I guess I'm speaking directly through you to the IHC folks. If you can save us $2.5 million and get your stuff in order, and then I think this body would be interested in that if you could make it happen.
We remedy based on what your staff.
So
Okay, I
we're
think
point
we
of
can.
order. Point of
Yeah,
order.
point of order, thank you. Okay, are we ready to vote on this? I'd like to, I'm,
address any of these concerns with you when we've only been given 3 minutes? I would recommend that we open this up.
Just point of order. The concern is to be addressed with the courts, so we'll just leave it at that.
okay, roll call on item A7. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So I have, so let's
If we're doing a roll call.
Let's do a roll call. Okay, Councilmember Harris,
No.
Councilmember Newsma,
Aye.
aye. Councilmember Burns,
That last question is important to me. Is that was
We got to vote on the floor.
no, and I know, and I got an uneasy yes on it, but that's
Uneasy yes gets us where we need to go.
I'll go yes. I'll go yes.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Okay, so with a vote of 4-1, item A7 passes with recommended to council. Okay,
And this still
item,
does go to council, right?
right, with a recommendation, the vote of 4-1. Okay, moving on to item A11. Would somebody like to move item A11?
I move item A11, approval of change order number 1 to the agreement with CDM Smith Incorporated for lead service line replacement plan and pilot implementation, RFP 21-20 through 29.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Reed and seconded by Councilmember Harris. Discussion on item A11.
Yes.
Councilmember Newsma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had some questions on A11, just to clarify what exactly we're getting with this expenditure. And as I'm understanding it, it's almost $49,000 for a website, and paying somebody else to develop that website. Is there somebody from staff that could address that? Dr. Kano.
Good evening, Councilmember Kelly, members of the committee, Deputy City Manager Stonebeck, Edgar Kano, Public Works Agency Director. Correct, $48,867 would be for the development of the lead service line replacement webpage, be able to give all the important information and technical data that the city is required to give to the residents. Currently, we feel that we do not have that expertise in-house. Also, it would be, there is a lot of regulations and technical data that we feel would be best presented in a way that could be understood if presented by the contractor.
You guys are pretty smart.
I like to think so,
$48,000
yes.
is a lot of money, and we need somebody on staff that can do website stuff, and I think that's in the budget proposal for next year. I would love to have the internal capability to do this kind of thing, and numerous other website projects. And so I guess I'm questioning, do we spend this money on a subcontractor for one project, or do we spend this money, maybe a little bit more, to ramp up our internal capabilities that will stay with us.
If we ramp up our internal capabilities, perhaps we would be able to do it. However, right now, again, just how spread thin we are, we don't feel, not only, do we have the staff power to do it, but again, just being able to lay it all out in a specific manner that's best shared with the
And
public.
is there a legal obligation for us to have a website like this?
Yes, my understanding is there is. No?
Staff is concerned that this is an important project that will impact every property, well, residential property in Evanston. And we want to engage the community members with all the detailed facts, both in English and in Spanish. We currently in the city do not have a digital specialist that would create the website. In addition, we've been trying to hire a civil engineer too at the water division for a long time that would help manage the lead service line replacement program. We've been unsuccessful in filling that job for over a year. So we don't have bandwidth with our current staff, not only the digital specialist, but it's also somebody that's helping at the water plant to manage the lead service line replacement program to develop this website. We expect funding to be rolling in next year. We have a loan application in to the IEPA to get $4 million. So this program is geared to take off next year as we receive those dollars. And even if we were successful in getting the digital specialist in the budget for 23, until you hire that position, it could be 2 months down the road. And I don't know when we're going to be able to find a civil engineer too that will help us at the water plant to manage all this. So yes, I agree. I would love to be able to do this all in-house, but we want to get the message out there. But again, it is council's decision on how we go, how we proceed.
And the funding would come from the water fund
Yes, it would.
and would not put us over budget?
No, it would not.
Okay.
It's over the original.
Yeah.
I think we have an allocation large enough for the lead service line that this would be incorporated to that total line allocation, not specifically earmarked for the
Okay.
engineering services.
This is an example of the kind of thing I'd really love to be able to handle internally. And I don't think anyone's going to disagree. If we were adequately staffed, we should be able to handle this kind of thing internally.
Councilmember Reed?
Thank you. I agree. I'm not going to, this is I think a relatively small dollar amount of 48,000. But I do just want to, I agree, I would like to build this capacity, but I think for what I think is being described here, it wouldn't just be hiring one new employee. I think it'd be a small team of a few folks to build, have the capacity internally to build a website from the ground up. So I think we're, talking about potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually be able to do what we're talking about. And, if we're only doing this a few times a year, 3 or 4 times a year, maybe it does just make sense to pay a contractor in this sense. So I support this. I think it makes sense. And I would like to look into that, but I do think it would be larger than just hiring one person. It'd be a team of 3. But it'd be nice to have that kind of capacity internally.
And as Bureau Chief King just reminded me, this is also comes with the extension to extend the engineering services for support with the lead service line replacement pilot.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris?
I too just want to go on record. I keep being new to the council. I keep hearing consultants, and it worries me. I believe, having just recently worked with you, that you're doing the best and that we are short-staffed and we are looking at creating new positions, filling old positions. I'm going to keep sticking to that we have to look at hiring the talent that helps keep these jobs and these responsibilities in-house and not keep having consultants. So I appreciate that we need this, that we need to do this, but I'm going to still stand with, we got to figure out how to do it internally. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of item, to support item A11? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, that's 5 votes in favor of item A11. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. All those not in favor? Okay. 5-0 in favor of item A11. Okay, we move now
To
to...
be clear, when there's a voice vote, you just say the ayes have it. You don't say how many people.
Thank you very much for that. The ayes have it.
Yes.
Okay, moving to item A13.
Madam Chair, I'll move item A13, the report on the emergency replacement of 2 boilers at Noise Cultural Arts Center by Great Lakes Plumbing and Heating Company.
Is there a second for item A13?
Second.
Okay, item A13 has been moved by Councilmember Newsma, seconded by Councilmember Reed. Discussion, Councilmember Newsma.
I will support this. We don't really have much choice at this point anyway, but I just wanted to go on record that I'm disappointed that we end up in a place where we have to, on an emergency basis, replace infrastructure, HVAC infrastructure with natural gas infrastructure. I'd like us as a city to get to a place where we're thinking ahead and we don't end up having to replace things like this on an emergency basis. We can thoughtfully plan for a conversion to an all-electric future in accordance with our commitments under our Climate Action and Resilience Plan. So, end of speech.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris?
I'm sorry, too many buttons to push. Just wondering, do we have records of maintenance? Seems like a lot of things are happening. So I'm just wondering, do we have records of our maintenance, how often we're looking at things, so that we don't have these emergency situations?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Sean Cholick, Facilities and Fleet Manager. Yes, we do have some records, paper records. We are currently working on revamping our system for record keeping and data collection. We do have a regular PM that we do on our boilers. Every year we start them up, prep them, get them ready for the fall. In this case, as our staff was doing that, they detected some things that, were of concern to them. And as we looked into it further with some additional outside services, we discovered that, these boilers were in very bad shape and that we needed to take one of them out of commission immediately, and that the other would continue to provide issues throughout the winter. So, yes, we have some records. Most of them are in paper, and it is somewhat time-consuming to go back and gather information, but we do regular PMs on them.
Okay, so we do have service records. We just got to figure out how to bring them up to date.
Yeah.
How old was the boilers that are failing?
I don't remember off the top of my head the exact date, but they're well over 20 years old.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Reed?
Sean, I was a little worried hearing that, we have some records and, that it's on paper and that it's difficult to locate. So I would really, I think that to me raises for your department to start looking into some kind of software that allows us to, efficiently track that, similar to, what, some of the upgrades that are being made in 3-on-1, and, having a very clear system that can, if it, I would imagine that something like that exists.
Yeah, actually it does exist, and we are currently putting that, we've got a program called ViewWorks that we're implementing. It's taken a little bit of time to enter all the information and gather it, but we are actively working on that, and we have a plan to get that up and going so that we can start doing better data collection by the end of this year. It should be up and going. Now, that being said, it'll still take some time to gather all that information and build a better database over time, but we are currently working on that.
And you said the name of the software is ViewWorks?
Works, correct.
Okay. Well, glad to hear the follow-up to that, that we are working on getting and maintaining better records. So looking forward to learning more about ViewWorks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Reed. I'd also like to just go on record asking staff going forward if we can always reach out also to our local firms that could also carry these out to get their possible participation. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, all in favor of A14?
Aye. No, 13.
I'm sorry.
13.
Aye.
A13, sorry. Aye.
Can you restate it just so we're clear?
Sure, thank you. Councilmember Harris? Oh, restate the item?
Yeah, which is what
Okay,
we're voting on. So
We're voting on item A13, report on emergency replacement of 2 boilers at Noyes Cultural Arts Center by Great Lakes Plumbing and Heating Company.
Aye.
Aye.
Newsma, aye. Councilmember Burns? And Reed?
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Okay, that concludes the consent agenda. We now move to item A14. Would somebody like to move item A14?
I move item A14, Resolution 63R22, recognizing the public benefit of the city paying private sewer repair line cost in excess of $15,000 per repair for a residential property.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, item A14 has been moved by Councilmember Reed and seconded by Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, there are a number of amendments that I know, or a few modifications that were sent. Councilmember Kelly, I mean,
Yes.
do you want to make the
Sure,
motion, or I can
thank you.
move what?
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and move, that'd be great.
And so the modification would be to, it's, I think you emailed it to the committee.
I did, I emailed it
So
to
it's-
everybody on the committee.
Do you want to walk through it?
Sure. So what I just omitted the part regarding the value of the home because, as we know in Evanston, if you are elderly and you bought your home many years ago, the value could easily be over $500,000, even if you bought it for $100,000 or $200,000. So that would just require just constant updating. So I removed that part, and I also removed the part regarding insurance, though I think it would be a good idea. I'd like to ask that we do. Well, I've also shared with you, I consulted with my insurance agents, State Farm, and they said there is no such coverage even available. I can't even buy into it. So I just wanted to remove those items so that it's so the resolution is as originally planned, where if a resident earns $200,000 or less, as put forward as evidenced by income tax statement, and there is a lateral sewer work to be done under the public way, that the city would pick up the cost if it were to exceed any amount that exceeded $15,000. And I just want to state I also sent forward a statement from the senior water manager in Oak Park, because in Oak Park they do this. They cover it for everybody, and it's explained in that letter that I shared with everybody here. They cover the residential lateral sewer work if it's under the public way from the curb, and he explained also the cost involved, that for the most part it's under $5,000, and his feeling was that generally speaking for $15,000 he felt the city would likely not be on the hook for anything except for a rare occasion. I shared that with everybody, and I'm sorry, I just got the email from him this afternoon that he couldn't be here, so he did share that statement. I won't read it now, but it's in your email. So Oak Park covers it entirely. The city of Chicago covers it entirely for all their residents. They cover the full cost of any work done under the public way. Again, we're saying $15,000. Everybody would be obligated to pay that if it got to that amount. And anybody, only people, again, earning less than $200,000 would then pay, the city would then pay the difference. I also received a statement. I spoke at length with the senior director of GARE, the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, who, like many people, also feel that even $15,000 is a lot for many people, and they have offered to work with our staff to, in the future, amend this to make it so that it really is so that we're applying more of a racial equity analysis, so that in fact, maybe for some incomes, we reduce that amount. But that it is really important that we do something at this point. Many cities across the state do this, including my hometown of Rock Island and many others. And I can just give you a few names that offer relief for residents when they have sewer work under the public way, such as Elgin, Des Plaines, Oak Park, and others. So anyway, I just hope we can move forward with this. And again, I'm hoping that we'll pass this. And I would like to ask staff to consider amending this in the future to work with GARE. They've offered their services. Again, the Senior Director, Gordon Goodwin, has asked that staff consider amending this to strengthen it even more, particularly for our residents of very low income. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry. So I'm not gonna make the motion for you. I'll let you do that. But what I am gonna do is I do support bringing the number down to 10,000. I think there is support here to move it from 15 to 10. So I'm gonna move that we amend all of the sections that make a reference to in excess of 15,000 and move that down to 10,000. So I do support that.
Sorry. So would that be an additional amendment? How does that work with?
I'm
Okay.
not making. So the reason I apologize. I thought this was a different amendment. I don't necessarily support eliminating the market value of your home portion. I would support increasing that dollar amount to a house that's in excess of 600, 700, whatever, $1 million. But I do think there is, if you have $1 million house, I don't know if we need to, or a $2 million house, I don't know if we need to cover the cost for you. So,
Councilmember Burns?
well, so I first want to, I make the motion to.
Then you can make the motion.
Go ahead.
So, Dave, quick question: Are the sewer system, sewer lines, is it similar to where there's two sections where it's similar to water lines, where it's to the curb, to the where there's a component of it that starts at the home and then goes to the curb, and then there's another component from the curb to there? How does that work? Because the Oak Park email that you sent talks about curb to this, and even the insurance company that you mentioned said for the residents, like what? So what are we talking about here?
The city.
Go ahead.
The current city code indicates that the property owner is responsible for the private sewer service from the house all the way to and including the connection to the city's mainline sewer. And in Evanston, the city's mainline sewer is generally located in the center line of the street.
And I just want to add one. I'm sorry.
Real quick, thank you. So again, I know we require, and I think Councilmember Newsom is getting to that now, but again, I know we require house to main, but is it sectioned off in the same way that a water line is, where there's a connection between?
No, there is no delineation.
Okay.
There's no valve or anything that would delineate.
So I'm trying to understand why Oak Park specifically says from the curb to whatever
to the main. It's all the lateral sewer lines that including the connection to the main, to the curb where the private. Well, in this case, in the case of Oak Park, it's the street. In other cities, it includes the sidewalk. But in the case of Oak Park, it's to the curb of the street. And I just want to add, they do in Oak Park, the residents are responsible for paying for the televising. So they pay for the televising to determine the location of the that needs to be repaired, and if it's under private property, the resident pays for it, and if it's under public property, then the city pays for it. And it's similar in Chicago.
So it says repairs from building sewer to curb line, and then there's another section of their code that says repairs from curb line to connection with street sewer mains.
Correct. Those are the lateral lines.
So repairs from building sewer to curb line, it says that the portion of the building sewer from the building drain to the curb line shall be at the expense of the owner or
Right.
tenant of the premises.
Correct. It's from the, in the case of Oak Park, it's just the street. So meaning from the building to the curb line of the street, that's the responsibility of the property owner.
Of the property owner.
Right. And then from the curb to the main line, those are what we generally refer to as the lateral lines.
And
from
so
the-
we're only talking about that here.
Correct.
Okay.
That's all we're talking about in this case here. So, and again, so how do we do this with my amendments and your amendment? I hope that we don't have to go for property value at this point. Someone who owns a $2 million house likely is not going to be, is going to be earning over $200,000. And also with the numbers that we previously saw regarding potential costs, we didn't see the income that was attached. It's possible the city, had that been a rule back then, it's possible we wouldn't have been on the hook for any dollar amount also because we don't know what the income levels were. And I think it's worth stating that those making $200,000, that has increased over the years. We're getting close to 20%. Unfortunately, people also, poverty has increased, so we're having an increase on both ends. Councilmember Newsom.
Madam Chair, I'm going to suggest, I won't yet make the motion, but I'm going to suggest, I hate to do it, that we table this. So all these details can be worked out, and everyone has them in front of them, every member of this committee and the members of the public and staff, so we're not all trying to pick up the pieces in 15 minutes and figure out what it was we just approved. I don't think this is an efficient way of making policy.
Okay, okay, that's fine. I just do want to state, though, that I think everybody agrees, from people speaking from GARE, that we need to do something, that the way our current policies stand, it's very unequitable, extremely inequitable. And right now, we leave we're going to, we risk pushing yet more people out of Evanston. Evanston's become very unaffordable. So I just ask, okay, if you want to give.
That makes sense. I mean,
I just
I'm
think we
not
should
in
move
favor
forward
of
on this.
I'm
and
not
then
in
amend.
favor of imposing an unknown financial burden on the entire community, whether that's taxpayers or sewer ratepayers. One way or the other, we would have to pay for this. We don't know how much, potentially quite a bit.
Right, but that's
Is it going to
what-
be 50 million? Probably not, but even if it's 10% of that, that's something we should know about. So I see the way the wind is blowing. I don't think I'm going to be able to convince you to not do this, but if we are going to do it, let's do it in such a way that we know what the heck we're doing, and we know what we're talking about, we know what's being voted on, and that was the intent a month and a half ago, was to have these conversations in an OMA compliant way, offline, so we could come to the dais and vote on something, rather than amending stuff on the fly. I don't find this to be an effective way of making policy.
Okay, when would you like to table
So
this?
I will move to table this
Is that to a date certain? I'm sorry, or is that?
until next month.
Till our next
Until our
APW?
next meeting.
Well,
Oh, I'll second it. You already did? Okay. So it's been tabled. Okay, so it's been tabled and seconded to November, I'm sorry, what? November 17th?
Can I just say that enough time be left to talk about it? Because this happens every time. There's not enough time to talk about it. Anybody has a comment, and then time's up.
And just
We'll-
point of
we will
information, this
dedicate-
isn't about time, it's more so to have a finished ordinance that doesn't require amendments on the
So
floor.
we'll make sure that everybody has all the information ahead of time to study. And perhaps if staff could consult with GARE, they would like to also help with this. They feel even 15,000, I'm glad it was motioned to move it to 10. That is also, that we should be looking at this again with assessing it from the perspective of an equity analysis, that we have many people, even $10,000. Again, in Chicago, it's covered entirely, in Oak Park and other cities. So even 10,000, though that's much better than what we currently have on our books, I would like to ask if staff could consider preparing a document that would, working with GARE for our next meeting. Okay, so tabled and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Okay, the motion to have this tabled until November 17th.
You don't ask for nays,
Right.
it's just a.
I'm sorry, what did I just say, November 14th?
17th.
November 17th?
Do you want to call for nays, people who object to this?
Okay, any objections? Okay, so the ayes have it. This has been tabled until November 14th. Okay. Almost. Next item for consideration is item A15.
Madam Chair, I'll move item A15, Resolution 73R22.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilmember Reed.
No, that was from before.
No discussion.
I think you can call for the vote.
You can, yeah.
No discussion? Okay, so all those in favor of item A15?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Item A15 passes. Moving to item A16.
I move item A16, Resolution 112R22, authorizing the city manager to hire participatory budgeting staff.
Second.
A16 has been moved by Councilmember Reed and seconded by Councilmember Burns. Any discussion?
You can call the question.
Okay, no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item number A16 passes.
Move.
Go ahead.
Move Resolution 113R22, authorizing Canal Shores to enter into an agreement with Last Call Tavern Group LLC to host a University of Ohio alumni tailgate on November 5th, 2022.
Second.
Second, yeah.
Okay, any discussion on item A17? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
I move item Resolution 114R22, approving extended hours for a one-day liquor license for Last Call Tavern Group on November 5th, 2022.
Second.
Any discussion of item A18? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on to D1, discussion, and who would like to move item D1?
So move.
Second.
Second.
Okay, great. Item D1's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Councilmember Burns.
Just to be brief on this, this was a referral that I made. There are two examples that I know of, and probably many more, where a tree on, where a tenant reported a rotten tree on private property. The city came out, inspected it. Don't necessarily know how that, I don't think we have a program to do that, but I think a request was made and it was granted. Someone from the city came out, determined that the tree was rotten, and the tenant reached out to the landlord or and did not get a response. Eventually, I think these ended up as property standards complaints. The current code states that after 30 days that you have a 30-day notice. A 30-day notice is provided, giving the property owner time to remove the tree. If the tree isn't removed, they're fined, which is essentially how most of our kind of property standards process goes. The issue is, in the case of a rotten tree, even if you give that 30-day extension, even if you fine the person, what if the tree falls, right, and injures someone? That could be on public property, right, in the public way, driving down an alley, walking down the street. So in these particular cases that I was made aware of, they were concerned. They reached out to the city because they were concerned that the trees were going to fall. They both, in fact, did fall. In one case, it fell exactly where the tenant was concerned it was going to fall, which was into the bedroom of her elderly parent who is sick. And thankfully, no one was injured, but it fell exactly where she thought the tree was going to land or fall. And in the other case, it fell on a trampoline in the backyard where if hours before or after, this tree would have likely injured or even killed young people. This was a trampoline that young people frequented. So I think it is incumbent on the city to fundamentally to protect people from harm. I think if we know a tree is rotten, and we've given that 30-day period, maybe even a longer period, but we've given some period for the property owner to address it, that we should be able to go out and remove the tree or to address, the damaged tree limbs. And I think the way Council Cummins described it is that it could be a lien towards the property so that we could recoup those funds eventually. We've done something similar to this before that I'm aware of, where there was a water service line that was on the private side of the line that was creating a tripping hazard because there was a leak, and so the water was kind of coming up to the surface, and it was wintertime, and it created a slick surface, so a hazardous situation. And the city actually went in and repaired the water service line. After repeated attempts to try to get the landlord to fix it, the city did it. So there is precedent to do this. And again, I think the main concern is that a tree, in both cases, these are big, huge trees that could not only fall and injure someone on the private property, but also could injure someone on public property or in the public way.
Let's see. Mr. Stonebeck.
Thank you. The reference to repairing the water service on private property occurred after January 1, 2022, in which City Council approved the lead service line replacement at no cost to the homeowner. So the city replaced the lead service line under that mechanism, and no lien was filed. We replaced it for free, as was our current practice now. So that changed.
You talking about Alliance?
Yeah, that changed with the calendar year and City Council's direction that we replaced.
So without any approval from the property owner, you were able to do that? Because the lead pipe service line requires approval from the property owner. We couldn't even give them the call back about that.
We were allowed into the property to replace it, I believe by the tenant, but we were allowed to go in and replace it at no cost to the homeowner, to the property owner. So that's how that got resolved. It didn't result in a lien.
So you're just saying we had a fund to do it, but it still got replaced. You're just saying we had to set aside amount of money to do it, but it still got addressed.
Yes,
Okay.
but without having to file a lien
Yeah.
on the property. So that's what the city's biggest concern is filing liens on properties for the removal of a dead tree or a dead limb on a tree. First, the city staff would have to be involved with hiring a contractor to get quotes, then use the lowest quote, then have the portion or the whole tree removed, pay that contractor out of funds that don't exist, and then file a lien against the property. Generally, liens are only good for 7 years, and then in 7 years, you have to remember to refile the lien again, and if you have turnover in city staff, that might occur. We also identified while looking into this issue with the two cases that you're indicating, the notice of the problem comes to the forestry department, and they went out and they sent a letter saying they had 30 days to cure the remedy. What the issue was is the forestry department then is not set up to go out and start issuing citations. So it was months later that we involved community development, property standards, and jointly went after the homeowner. We were successful in getting $300 fine for the one property. The other one we didn't. Staff recommends that instead of doing this, staff has realized that when this situation occurs, the forestry department's made aware of it, and if it's on private property, the forestry division and community development property standards will jointly go out to inspect the tree and give the 30-day notice, but then property standards will be right on board right away to issue the citation to get the tree removed. We go to adjudication, and at that adjudication meeting, staff can indicate whether this is something they're You know, it could be every day is you're in default of the not curing the remedy, right? So if it's a really bad one that we need removed, we can start saying, we're going to fine you $300 a day, and I think that will get the property owner to take the action that they need to remove the tree. If they realize that they're going to get a citation of that amount on a daily basis, staff failed to properly execute what's already allowed by our city code in the 2 cases that you've identified. And we request that you allow staff the opportunity to correct our error of the past and manage this situation as the way the current city code is allowed. Because again, we don't believe that staff has the time to hire an outside contractor, receive the quotes, award the project, and then start the whole lien process to get the homeowner to reimburse us for it. So we're just asking that you allow us to correct our mistake and move forward with the current city code. And then if that doesn't work and you hear other situations, then we'd be willing to address this concern.
Yeah, I mean, just so we can move on to the next one. I mean, I just want to make sure that this referral stays open because, again, I'm leading on working with staff on a lot of property standards issues. There's a lot of people that are fined in this town for property standards violations, and they never cure them. And so, and fundamentally, my concern ultimately is trying to save someone from being injured or killed because of a big tree falls, especially after a tenant has repeatedly reached out to the city, making several property standards complaints about this. So I want to, I'm fine with trying that, but I would like to keep this referral current so that I can keep track of what's happening, and if need be, we can bring this back up.
Councilmember News.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think if we're talking, potential hazard to life and limb, that it merits, more attention than it might otherwise. I totally understand that the lien remedy is kind of cumbersome and not the best, at least not the best first course of action in this case. I had a question about how a problem, a tree limb being in danger of falling down, if that tree was on city property, how would that get addressed?
It would come in through the forestry department, and then somebody from the forestry department would go out, analyze the tree, and if they felt that it was in immediate danger, we go out and hire a contractor. We get the 3 quotes and hire a contractor to remove the tree.
So we don't have that in-house capability. It's a contractor that would be required.
It depends on the size of the tree. If it's a huge tree and it has to come down right away, then we're going out for a contract. If it's a manageable tree with our crew, yes, we would take it down ourselves immediately.
But whether it's a city city staff or a contractor going onto private property is an entirely different set of circumstances.
Yes, we would not have city staff go on to private property. We would have to contract that out. City staff does not do work on private property.
Even if it's a lead service line?
All right, now I'm backstroking on. That is correct, because we will hire a plumber to replace the portion of the lead service line that is on private property, and city staff will do the portion of the lead service line that is on the public side. So going back to Councilmember Burns, the city hired a plumber to go in and replace the lead service line from the home out to the parkway, and the city did from the parkway to the street.
But in either case, we would need, I guess, ideally, the property owner's approval. If it's immediate threat to life and limb, we'll take a tenant can let you in the door or let you in the gate.
Again, I'm not an attorney, so I don't know whether a tenant would be allowed us in, or there may not even be a tenant. It could be a single-family home, and the tree branch is going over to the neighbor's property and could potentially fall and break the fence between the properties or hit the adjoining neighbor's property. And if the gates are all locked, I don't know how the city would get in there to cure that. We would have the same issue if we hired a contractor. The contractor, how do we get in?
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, same way the tenants let people in with most property standards issues. So I think the tenant, again, the examples that I provided is not somebody that owner-occupied residence. This is something where there's a tenant. So in the same way the tenant allows the city in to address other property standards issues, is the same thing that would happen here. And then also from talking to Council Cummins, he did feel in fact that this was something that reached that level that would allow us to not have to get permission from the owner, because again, the tree has already been determined that it's rotten, and we have several other recent cases that shows that if the tree is rotten and there's a big weather event, big storm, it's a high chance that it's going to fall down. I think we could, we have enough evidence to support it. So, but again, I'm fine keeping this referral active. This is a big issue. Again, in a short period of time, this has happened twice, but I'm happy to see if this works. But if it doesn't, I want to be able to come back and make sure that we can address it.
Next. It's just discussion.
Okay, so we move now to item D2 for discussion. Would someone like to move item D2?
Madam Chair, I move item D2, discussion on code enforcement inspectors complaint process.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
So I don't know how this, how the memo ended up focusing probably 80% on body cameras, because if you read the original referral, the referral itself had nothing to do about body cameras. The referral was actually about creating or expanding our complaint process to include all code enforcement officers. And then there's another question on the referral form for all my colleagues up here that says, like, explain how this policy change could possibly impact other policies that we have. And I said, well, one of the things we could look at is expanding the body cam policy. But the referral itself had nothing to do with dash cam or body worn cameras. And the only reason I say it's unfortunate that it focused in on that, because the actual referral had more to do with seeing if we could, one of the things is seeing if our, the complaint, I can't remember the committee that reviews the police complaints, but if that
Citizen Police Review
Citizen
Commission.
Police Review Commission could expand the complaints that they review to include all code enforcement officers, and if that would, and I think in the memo it said that staff hadn't reached out to them yet to get their interest, which I don't know necessarily why we would do that, but if we were to do that, I would have expected that to happen by now, because then we could have that discussion. So unfortunately, the memo really, unless it's changed since the last time this came up, it doesn't really address the referral itself, which is, again, creating some transparent and public process to review complaints against all code enforcement officers and not just police officers. So I need more information. So I'll, in between meetings, I'll try to get that from city staff.
Councilmember Newsom.
I'll just weigh in. I think it makes sense to have some kind of formalized complaint procedure for building inspectors and anybody else for that matter. Does it fit into the police complaint protocol or somewhere else? That's the question we need to discuss. It's not going to happen tonight. Body cameras on property inspectors is not something I'm super thrilled about.
Again, was not a part of the original referral. I just want to make that clear.
Yep.
That was focused on for whatever reason and then written about, but that was not a part of the original referral, the main referral.
Okay. So yes, I agree on both those accounts that body cameras feels invasive on property inspectors, and also where that belongs. It seems like AP&W for that particular item might not be the right place, but we can discuss that another time. Okay. Any other items for communication?
I guess just to make it clear, because I was speaking, is just at the next meeting, I would like to get that, to have that information available in terms of, let's have the conversations with the review committee to see what they think, and then if not that, where does this fit, so we can discuss it. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further communications, move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, AP&W adjourned.
P&D will start in 2
Okay.
minutes.
We are
P&D will
adjourning
start right now.
AP&W at, what is that, 6:49, and we will be...